this is Kyril and Swimming. We're from Sinar Project. Basically what we are is an organization that uses technology to make government information more accessible. These days people are hoping or actually expect that you can get this kind of information through a quick Google. Or they want to know things immediately. And unfortunately that is still a big challenge, and our aim is to build all these tools and make it accessible so that the average person can quickly search or find out information on how the government works for them easily through online or mobile phones. Yeah.
So one of the things that we do down here is to build software, we build website, we build data infrastructure, like our people organization database can be reused by other people for different kind of project that is outside of what we are focused on. So one might build a conflict of interest website, one can simply build tools for current election or last election and whatnot, do comparison. So we spend our time building the technology to make information accessible and more importantly reusable for others.
We actually started this way back in 2011, and the main thing that happened at that time was the government was a parliamentary bill or law was leaked out called the Computer Professionals Bill, which required every person working in IT or technology to actually register to a board, have certain requirements and certifications before they even allowed to be employed. So basically if you want to design a website and you don't have a special website certificate or an IT degree, you would be working illegally. So generally tech people are what we call politically not involved most of the time. But this was the first time that a lot of tech people realized what the government does affects their livelihoods. So it was the first time that technical people actually got upset. And they actually stormed Putrajaya, I think about 200 of them, to actually make their peace. So but being tech people, we realized it's like, okay, how can we prevent this automatically from happening? How can we know about our bills in future? So then we started building tools like scraping the parliamentary website to find out and then get alerts or notices about when the latest bills comes out. So that was one of the first efforts. And then after that, Bersih 2 happened. And what happened at Bersih 2 was a lot of tech people actually came out, but individually, not collectively. And soon after Bersih 2, we actually had a kind of bar camp or what they call a geek camp on for tech people to talk about random topics.
It's a gathering of technical person to do knowledge sharing.
Yeah. And we actually had a session for what is it called? Yes, I don't think we called it civic tech at that time because I don't think the term was invented at that time. But basically saying technology to do for good or technology for better governments. And this is like right after Bersih. And what was interesting at that time was that what we found out was actually a lot of the people in the room went to Bersih individually. So that actually created the initial core of what we call, activated tech people who wanted to do civil society things to make a change. And that's when our community kind of started. And that's when in our internet chat rooms, we actually came up with the term Sinar Project. Sinar for sunshine or transparency. So it started as a volunteer online open source thing. We didn't even have a website. We actually had a code repository first before a website where people collaborated on projects.
So people can't really find us.
Yeah.
So people that know us tend to be very technical. Yeah. So we're not really open to the non-technical folks yet at that time.
But when G13 came out, there was also a movement called Undi Malaysia. That's by what they call the Loya Bureau, or officially the Malaysian Center for Constitutionalism and Human Rights. It's a mouthful. And that's when we actually started working with other groups, participating with other civil society groups and other activists or youth activists. And that's when we Sinar Project became more of, instead of just a techie group, to be actually more like another civil society group, but with a slightly different focus. So on the elections, so I mentioned that we sort of came together around 2013 with our grants and then with the collaboration with Undi Malaysia, and that was also just before the general elections. So what we found out in the general elections 2013 was that people had just seen the Obama election, I think. I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was around the same time. And people were impressed. They went to Google, they could track the votes, they could see the information, and people were expecting, like, why doesn't Malaysia have something like this, right? What we first learned was there is no information like this. We cannot build tools like this. We actually have to collect the data. There was no data. There was no structured data on our things. So the best that we could do at that time was basically have a little workshop with all the other kind of activists, and say, okay, let's have a website and collect all the information that we can on our candidates. And we ended up with, quite a lot of them, about 50 to 60 MPs. We concentrated on just the parliamentarians first. That was also an eye-opener for us, in the sense that we learned that we actually don't know much about our parliamentarians, and we have very little information on them. We ended up just having about 66 out of 222.
Yeah. And you also found out about the access to a parliamentarian is actually very limited. So it's not something technology could change. You can send email or even physical mail and they will not reply, and they have the right of not replying.
Yeah. And our partners, MCCHR, actually even wrote letters, registered letters, and most of them bounced back. So even the official addresses on the parliamentary website may not be legit addresses. So this is, at least for us, this is really scary. We have an elected body that creates laws, that creates budgets, that runs our lives, and we have no idea who they are. If you're going to hire somebody, you would at least ask them for their CV and you would have an interview. We have people running the country in which we don't even have their CVs. We don't even know who they are. And as we've seen in some news, some of them even have fake degrees. And these are the people who are making, billion ringgit decisions on our education, our health, whether our roads are being built or not, and so on. So that was scary. So we considered GE13 like a lesson learned. Okay, it was pretty good effort at that time, but how can we do this smarter for the upcoming elections? There's actually an international effort on this, and it's not just Malaysia that has this problem. And we learned about the approaches that they had in trying to get information for politicians. That was also an eye-opener for us, because we also learned that it's not going to be an easy task. The UK people shared with us that it took actually 8 years for them even to just get basic digital information from Parliament. So they started a long time with us. So that was, that provided us a more realistic time frame, in the sense that, look, we're not that bad. We are just starting, but other countries have the same problems, and even in the UK it was not that fast for them to be able to get to where they were. One of the first things that we learned from the UK was that there was international standards in collecting this information. This is required in order to build applications. So people often demand, can we have a smartphone app that gives us the internet? But to build this kind of application, you need the data in a specific format.
So it's like a common language. Yeah. So it's a common language for different applications to talk to. So once you have a common language, then you can have you can build different tools more easily, because you know essentially what they're talking about.
And the other benefit of this is that as we add more information to it, all the applications built onto it gets better. So if you build a website and you don't have a picture of MP now, if another person does a research project and finds a picture and puts in a database, now the website will have an MP. So it can be an ongoing thing on which the data just keeps improving each time, and everybody benefits. So the first efforts we did with this was with Undi Malaysia. So they wanted to make a My MP site. And we said, okay, let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's just build it on this database. So our approach now for GE14 is mostly saying that, okay, we know that a website of candidates can be built pretty fast. if we have the data in the correct format. We're building it our own candidate website based on this data, but we also tell everybody, look, including example codes, if you want to make your own, go ahead. If you want to make a mobile app, you can just reuse this data that we're building in. And
our data is actually publicly accessible, just
yeah.
in case it's not clear,
yeah.
so people can actually build anything on it.
Yeah. We're kind of confident when people are wondering, like, what are you doing? There's only 3 weeks left before the GE14. What are you doing? And we're like, calm down. We've done this before. We've actually developed the scripts, and that's been tested and retested to know that we can do this relatively quickly. So now we actually have dozens of sheets already with the automated scripts in which our volunteers are able to once synchronize the database with the existing one, but at the same time they're also just able to open Google Docs and enter the data in a specific format. Because of that, we're doing a workshop to teach volunteers on entering this data for us. I think it's going to be held at NCCHR this Saturday morning.
10 a.m.
Yep, at 10 a.m. So our hope is that in the next 2 weeks, we'll be collecting all the basic data so that when the nominations are announced, we would actually have at least basic information on all the candidates. When Malaysians start looking up our website in the next few weeks, they'll actually see, when they decide on the candidates, which candidate is actually clean and transparent, and which one actually has a history of either hateful comments or corruption, or even lack transparency in the sense of not even sharing their basic CV. We're also hoping that Malaysians will make a better informed choice when they vote with our candidate site, not just on the basic data, but also on the track record of their candidates. Yeah.